Even though this may not have been the best episode of the series, it still had enough to make it an enjoyable viewing. I'll admit I was worried when the episode began and it looked like another Mission of the Week episode, a format that I haven't enjoyed so far. But what we ended up getting felt a lot different than some of the other missions. The Empire's absence meant that a lot of the character moments that I've been waiting for from the Bad Batch, where they have to deal with any drama or guilt from the war in Order 66, weren't going to happen here. But a gangster's villain of the episode at least felt fresh compared to all the Bad Batch versus Empire stuff we've been getting. And while I wanted to see more of Echo this season, his and Hunter's absence didn't end up bothering me nearly as much as I expected. Instead, Tech got a lot of the focus here, and while Wrecker once again doesn't really do that much, Omega had some of her own moments too. She stands up for Sid and takes initiative in her group and is willing to risk it all when nobody else has an idea. Safatoma was interesting enough as a new location, with a neat layout and a lot of aliens and creatures, something I do appreciate after Andor. And while it can be repetitive and slightly annoying seeing the same animation designs for both humans and aliens, there is the real-world aspect of the production, and I would much rather see a bustling crowd with a little repetition than only a handful of people walking around this planet. The riot racing is what I really liked out of this episode. At first I thought we were going to get more pod racing, but this was a fun alternative that fit well within the lines of the story and the characters. The races were all fun to watch, even if the tension wasn't always there, because of how different the course and pods were, which implements a completely new strategy that we see with Tech later on. Teo was a neat new character, but it also felt very on the nose in terms of the character's comedic moments, which I didn't mind all that much, but I wouldn't consider it a positive of the episode. For a show that was supposed to be a sequel to the Clone Wars, this still feels overly childish to me. I was willing to give the first season a pass because that's how all Star Wars animated shows are, but even though it's made for children obviously, I was hoping the tone of this series would be slightly closer to where we left off with Season 7 of the Clone Wars. Anyways, I got excited when I saw the Nosorian Racer, first assuming that he was Clegg Holdfast from the Boonta Eve pod race, but I don't think this character was ever named, so who knows. While I've had problems with Sid in the series, this episode did a lot for me to become interested in her. It's obvious that she and Malegi used to know each other well, and it seems like Sid has a backstory that, to be honest, I don't think will come up anytime soon, but it does leave room for the relationship between her and the Bad Batch to get complicated. Omega is quick to defend her, and Wrecker and Tech went along with the plan, but the clones have expressed caution about Sid and her missions in the past, and if word gets out about what she used to do, that could be the catalyst that forced the clones back out into the galaxy. Malegi does just enough in this episode to spark the interest of the clones, so we may start to see them question Sid's past next week, which I would want to see. The rest of the episode is mostly action cut in with some comedic moments, which I already touched on, but in my opinion Tech was easily the standout of this episode, and while it didn't go as far to the point where I was genuinely concerned about him during the race, he did get a good amount of development here. In the first season, he was the technology guy of the group, and every time we saw him he knew all the answers, no matter the situation. Now, for whatever reason, possibly just because he's out in the galaxy in unfamiliar territory, something he was definitely not trained for on Kamino, we've seen him in more situations where he doesn't know everything, like when he first encounters the racing, that to him is too random and unpredictable. But we also see him stretch his limits, volunteering to be the one that races. While it does still have elements specifically fitting with his character, joining the race is more something that Hunter or Echo would do, but they're not there. Tech has to stretch his limits and become more well-rounded, something we've seen from a lot of the Bad Batch this season. They were each created to have a specific role in the team, but as the galaxy and their circumstances change, they have to be able to perform different tasks to survive. While this series may not be suited for someone of my age, and I had a good amount of criticism for the first season, the second season has at least given me hope that eventually I can come to really enjoy the Bad Batch's characters, so that I'm not constantly looking forward to a standalone episode that doesn't include them, like last week's episode with Cody and Crosshair. That is another thing that I wouldn't consider a complaint, but this season so far is completely focused on one side of the story each week. While the first season saw a lot more of the cutting between the Bad Batch and Crosshair, so far each week we've alternated between the Bad Batch and Crosshair. It does make the episode feel more linear and organized, only having to follow one storyline at a time, but especially after what we got last week from Crosshair, I did feel his absence in the show this week. He's definitely the character that I'm most excited in seeing every time he's on screen, because they have gone into depth with his character, focusing on how he's an outlier in the Empire but is still trying to prove his loyalty, and how Cody's words may have affected his own beliefs. I expect that this alternating of episodes will continue for at least the first half of the season, so that does make me excited for next week's episode, just because much more seems to happen when we're following Crosshair and the Empire. While it still suffers from similar problems as the rest of the series, Faster does have redeemable moments of enjoyable action, world building, and character-focused moments, earning a rating of 8 out of 10. Let me know what you thought of the 4th episode in the comments below. Remember to like the video, and subscribe for more reviews like this. Thank you all for watching, and remember, the Force will be with you, always.